This is the ACE Complete bookkeeping model. The intention of this model is that you only ever see one sheet at a time. So we're currently looking at the main menu. On the main menu, you'll see there's lots of different buttons, and we can literally click on those buttons to navigate to other parts of the file. The blue buttons at the top here and the setup, these are areas where you will input data. The rest of them, all these green ones, they will be the reports that are generated as a result of what you input. You've also got some sort of extra check reports on these blue buttons as well. So we'd start off in the setup sheet. So in here, we've literally got lots of different lists of information that we need to populate to start the process off. So the first two columns here are our expense types. On these green cells, so green indicates that you can edit the cell. So we can literally just overwrite any of these. These are just examples I've put in just to get you started. We can overwrite any of those if need be, but every single one, every single expense type that we put in has to be assigned to a HMRC category. So in these purple cells, every single cell has a drop-down list to the right where we can literally see the defined categories from HMRC, and we have to select one. If you struggle, we've always got other, so you can always allocate things to other if need be. Okay, so I do that at the very beginning before you start inputting data. The next section here is clients. So we literally have these columns here where we put in the client name, their email address, and then the physical address. That's all relevant for generating the invoice. So the email address will be used and the address will be populated on the invoice as well. We also have at the end here, we've got the income type, so you can list the different income types that are relevant, just to help you differentiate between where your income's coming from. And then we also have payment types here. So we've got cash, which you can't edit because it's not green. We've got bank one. I'm going to overwrite that and I'm going to call it current. You can call it whatever you want. You can put in the name of the bank if you wanted to. I tend to have current, reserve, and Stripe. But it's entirely up to you. You can call those whatever you need them to be. Okay, now what you'll notice when we change those payment types is when I go back to the main menu, this button here that was called Bank 1 is now called Current. We've got Bank 2 and Bank 3, and they will obviously be overwritten as well. Just beneath those, we've got these three on the left. So unallocated Current, which was Bank 1, unallocated Bank 2 and Bank 3. So obviously they will be overwritten as well as you edit those on the setup. So once we've done that, we can then go and start inputting some information. So on the income sheet, again, any cells coloured green we can edit. Any cells coloured yellow will contain formulas. So if you click on a cell, if you try and edit a cell that's yellow, you'll see this pop up to tell you that the sheet is protected and we can't make any changes. So you shouldn't need to remove the protection because if you need to, it means you shouldn't be editing that cell in the first place. Okay, so in this file, we have a column for debtors brought forward. So we literally have a pick list on the cell where we can select debtors brought forward, and you'll see the entire row turns orange. Obviously, those values then will also be eliminated from the profit and loss because they're related to a prior year. So that's there if you need to use that. I'm going to delete that for now. You can see I've input the date, and it gives you a pop-up that we need to use the format DD/MM/YY, and then it's formatted so all the dates will appear as that with the 3-letter abbreviation for the month. We put in the invoice number, we can select the client from the pick list. We can select the type from the pick list when we populated it, and we can put in the description. The description is important because that will also appear on the invoice itself. This next column is paid, and that's yellow, so we can't edit it, but I'll come back to how that works shortly. We've got VAT, yes or no. We can choose whether the invoice we're raising is going to include VAT or not. If we choose yes, when we put in the net of 2,000, it will automatically populate the VAT with 20% of that net value, and then obviously calculate the gross as well. The final cell we can edit here is the payment type, and we have a pick list here, and it gives us the same list that we saw on the setup with our different bank account names. So you can see that's updated already for current. So again, that will update as we amend those on the setup page. If we choose cash, it will automatically change paid to yes. And if it's either of the banks, it will need to go and check the bank accounts, which I'll come to. These 3 columns here, if something is paid, you'll see they are blank. If I change that value there to, let me change that to 3,000. you'll see that changes to part paid. And this then works out how overdue it is. So it'll say it was due for payment on the 15th, it's set for 14 days. So the invoice date was the 1st of April, it's due to be paid on the 15th of April. So it's currently 56 days old, which is in the debtor day category of 30 to 60 days. So you'll see that later on the dashboard. These next 6 columns, so they're in pairs of 2. So these 2 relate to the date from the current account and the value from the current account. So this pulls in the latest date of payment received for that invoice number and how much it was. This column then at the end calculates the bank difference, so it shows you any difference of what's been received. So what's going on this line is we should have received 3,600, and so far allocated to that income ref we've got 2,400, so we've still got 1,200 outstanding. So this is just really useful for letting you know how much is outstanding or if anything been over allocated. Okay, so you would literally just use a new row for each invoice and populate all the details as you raise invoices. Okay, well, as soon as you put something into the income summary, I'm going to go back to the main menu, because then we could go to, where is it, generate invoice here. So in here we get a pick list and we can choose for our invoice numbers. We've only got one at the moment, so if I choose this one, obviously it will populate the client name and the address from the setup. It populates the invoice date and the invoice number. The description is as provided on the income sheet and the total amount is 3,000. It also includes the VAT, again linked to whether we've chosen yes or no, and then populates the total amount. On the left here, these green sections we can edit. The green colour will disappear as we edit something. So if I put gobbledygook in there, you'll see the green colour disappears. So you can put your account name in there, your sort code, your account number, and you can also edit this cell here. So it says currently payment is now due. You could edit that and say payment due in 14 days or overdue or whatever you wanted. You can edit those as much as you need to. So once that's populated the invoices you need, we've got these 3 green buttons. So we can click print and it will print this page to your default printer. We can click save and it will save a copy of this invoice as a PDF, and it will save it into the same folder that this file is saved into. Or we could click email, so that will again generate the PDF and save it into that same folder, but it will also go through Outlook and it will start a new email, and it will address the email to the email address associated with that client, and it will populate the body of the email and attach the PDF document as well. You're always in control of pressing send on that invoice, by the way, so it will never send them. It will always just save it as a draft. Okay, and then when you're ready, you can literally choose your next invoice number and it will repopulate with all those relevant information. Okay, back to the main menu. So we're going to go to costs. So in here, this is very similar to the income. We've got creditors brought forward. So again, we could choose creditors brought forward. It changes the whole row into orange and it will exclude it from the profit and loss. We've got a reference column here. I always recommend taking this reference number and scribbling that number onto the physical receipt and then filing the receipts in that order. It just helps if you ever have to find a receipt at a later date. You can't edit those reference numbers either. They are fixed and they are formulaed. So we'd enter the date, we'd enter the supplier, the expense type, again just off the pick list. We'd enter in the description, we'd enter whether it was there was VAT included or not, and we put the net amount in. The VAT will be calculated at 20%, but we can also overwrite that figure because sometimes VAT isn't included on the full amount, so it can get a bit complicated. So you can just physically overwrite that VAT number if you need to. We have payment type again, and we've got the different bank accounts plus cash. And again, it will calculate the due date and the creditor days like it did for invoices. We then again have these 7 columns at the end. So these 6 come in pairs for the different bank accounts, showing the latest date and the latest value that's been received, or the total value that's been received even. And it will also show you if there's any differences. Okay. Now this paid column, this links to the bank accounts. Okay, so let me go back to the main menu. So the next 3 buttons here are the 3 bank accounts. So I'm going to show you current. Bank 2 and Bank 3 are identical, so I'll just show you through one. So in here, we've got the opening balance there. So you could put in that you had an opening balance of £1,000. And then obviously that shows you your balance was 1,000. The next transaction was on the 10th of April. It was 2,400 in. So the total balance included that now was 3,400. in this green column, when you choose either income received or cost paid, you'll see here that these cells turn either blue or peach. So blue indicates we need to populate an income reference. The peach indicates a cost reference is required. If I was to choose bank charges, there's nothing in there. So it's only when we put income received or cost paid do we need to link it to the income or the costs. Okay, get rid of that one. So on income received there, I've said that the income referred to was 11111. The cost paid was related to cost reference number 1. So if I go back to income here, you can see that I've said we should receive 3,600. You can see there, it's pulled this data in from that bank sheet. So it said, oh, we had payment on the 10th of April and it was 2,400. If I knock this invoice value back down to 2,000, you'll see that the total we received was 2,400. We should receive 2,400, so therefore this is now paid. So that's what that is based on. If I change that to 2,100, obviously, we haven't received enough because we've only received 2,400 and we should have received 2,520. So that part paid is a real indicator to either the net value might have changed on the invoice, which is unlikely, or we've misallocated something in the bank. Okay, so let me just knock that back down to 2,000, so it's a nice yes. This happens exactly the same with the costs. So again, if I go back to costs, you can see we should have received 120, and you can see here that it's linked to the bank that yes, we've received 120, so this is paid. Okay, brilliant, all done. So with your current account, and your other 2 bank accounts, I would literally just put in every single transaction that you find from your bank account. And then there should be a description here that matches. So these are slightly different than the expense types that you'll find on the for the expenses, because some of these things wouldn't be going through expenses. So you've got things like paying VAT, paying corporation tax, paying directors' loan, salaries, etc. So some of those things you wouldn't be putting in your costs because they're just cash movements essentially. So you can choose, you've got cost paid and income received, which are going to change your colours, and you'll need to allocate those. Everything else should link into one of those descriptions. The big thing is that your bank balance always reconciles what your current bank statement balance is. If that's the case, then you know that you've captured every single expenditure, and as long as you've allocated all your income and all of your costs to a number here, you know you've captured every single number that you need to in your business, which is great. So I'll go back to the main menu. The only other sheet we haven't looked at is mileage. Let me look at this. So here we could literally populate the date in there. You could literally type in free text, where you've been, what you've been, where, you know, the name of the client or the meeting you went to or the networking event or whatever it was. You could say whether you had a passenger, yes or no, and you can put the number of miles in. So let me just put in, if I put in 10/4/26, if I put in, let's put in client A. Let me spell that right. Client A, there was no passengers and it was 100 miles. It then automatically calculates based on the mileage rate of 45 pence, 45p a mile, no passenger miles. If you do have a passenger, you can claim an extra 5 pence, it says, apparently. So literally we'd get passenger mileage of £5, so our total mileage would be £50. Okay, so that's all we need to log in there. So if you struggle to sort of keep a track on your mileage, every time you go somewhere, you can just pop it in there, because automatically this will feed through into your profit and loss. So let me go back to the main menu. So there are all your inputs done. We've already looked at generate invoice. You've got unallocated current. Let me click on there. This will give us on the left hand side, these are all your costs that have not been included in the cost sheet. And on the right hand side, these are all our payments received with no matching income. So currently they're both 0 and 0, which is brilliant. That's exactly what we need. Let me go back to the current account. I'm just going to upset these a little bit. So if I delete these, so they're not allocated anymore, and I go back to unallocated current, you'll see that this one costs, so there's £120 we spent on the train that hasn't been allocated to a receipt. So this is really useful because it generally tends to indicate something that where you've missed a receipt or you've not put it in yet. Here, that's income received that hasn't been allocated to an invoice. So again, it would indicate or we either haven't done the allocation or we haven't put the invoice in. Okay, so if I go and look at the income, for example, 2,400, we know that that was allocated against invoice number 11111. So now I'm going to go back to unallocated. You'll see that this side has come back to 0 because that's now allocated, but this one is showing that there's a discrepancy. So again, I can just put in invoice 1, reference 1, and then again, they all come back to 0. So that's what we're aiming for on those sheets. Okay, the bank 2 and bank 3 are exactly the same. They just link to the other bank accounts. Okay. We then also have a profit and loss. What this will do is it'll show us by month, April to March, just the 12 months. It shows us, oh, let me scroll down a little bit. So it starts with sales. This row's all sales, and we can see we've got in April total sales of 2,000, no cost of sales, so gross profit of 2,000. Then it shows us all of our expenses, and we can see we've got £100 there for travel. And then we've also got £50 for mileage, because that popped in automatically, didn't it, from the mileage sheet. So we've got total cost of 150. So one minus the other is a net profit of 1,850. It then includes annual investment allowance, interest paid, etc., etc., and then the tax-free allowance that we've got for the year. So that what this is saying is that in April, we should be paying tax on £800 worth of income. And then it calculates what the tax would be, and it calculates what the NI should be. Obviously, your tax and NI works out cumulatively, so you can see because we've got nothing going on for May yet, it then negates that. So it gives me a total for the year of 0, which isn't strictly true. I would literally just keep a look on each month. You know, or when you've got 3 months in, you can take the running balance. And just make sure that you've got that tax put away in your NIs. It also shows you your net profit and net profit percentage and your gross profit percentage, which are useful to keep a track on. You obviously get timing issues through the year, so I'd tend to keep a track mainly on the 12 months and just make sure that looks about right. Okay, so that's your profit and loss. You can't edit anything on there. It literally just is for you to review. We also have a dashboard. So the dashboard is really cool. It shows us invoices literally by month, total values. It then shows us invoices by type. So it shows you a pie chart of how your income has been made up by which different activities. We then get the same with cost, cost by month, and then cost by type as well. So again, we can see where our big spends are coming from. We then have profits, literally just by a month, and then we have aged debtors and creditors, so we can see if we've got any amounts outstanding for a long period or if we've been owing money for a long period as well. And they all populate automatically. So again, there's nothing to edit there, it's just for review purposes. Okay, so that's all of those. Then we have a VAT. So if you are VAT registered, which is why you'll be using the complete bookkeeping model, you get 4 separate sheets for your VAT returns. So this will be set up linked to your actual VAT return. So it will have your relevant VAT quarters in there. And this populates automatically. It literally will pull in all of these numbers accordingly. Okay, all you will then need to do is click on this button to generate the CSV file. That will then literally save a copy of the relevant file in CSV format that you can then upload through your bridging software. What I'd also recommend is include your VAT registration number, your user ID, your password for the government gateway, just because it saves you digging them out. So I tend to have them saved on that sheet anyway. But generate CSV file is literally all you need to do. You then upload that through your bridging software, which is fab. Okay, and then back to main menu, you've then got all your VAT returns for the 4 quarters. So literally, as you input income and costs in here, it will start populating automatically all your VAT returns. So you can always see at a glance where you're up to with VAT, which is super, it keeps it super simple, and just makes sure you're on track. The last thing we have here is a HMRC submission. So if I click on there, this again is connected to the template for the Absolute Tax Filer bridging software. We start off with the month type. We either have calendar, which is literally first of the month to the end of the month, or we have standard, which it ends on the 6th of the month. So whatever is selected here and for the quarter, it populates the start and end dates for that period. So Q1 starts on the 1st of April to 30th of June. If I switch that to the standard, it will start from the 6th of April and finish on the 5th of July. And obviously choosing the quarter will also amend the dates accordingly. Now, as we select those, so if I go back to calendar, okay, you'll see that will populate in these grey cells all of our income, 2,400, and then all of our expenses, 120. And then it literally pulls in one minus the other is 2,280 net profit loss. So this is the submission we will make to HMRC for quarter 1. Okay, we also have this section here for any disallowable expenses. So if we know that of those travel costs, 50 quid or 60 quid, say, was for personal use, we could literally put 60 in there. It keeps the 120 in there as it was, because that is the actual expense, but you'll see it deducts it from this cell here. So it's 120 minus the 60, so that gives you the balance. So it negates it there. Okay, so that's if that's relevant. I should take that out. Once you're done, you're happy with your submission, you can literally click that yellow button, and again, like you saw on the VAT, it will generate a separate file for you to then upload through the bridging software and submit it to HMRC. So it keeps the entire process super simple. You're not really doing anything different than you were doing before. You've just got this submission piece on the end. Okay. Final couple of bits on here. We have a checks button. If I click checks, it will run through and just make sure everything looks in order, and it will pop up if it's happy. It says all checks are complete and all data has been entered correctly. And what this is checking for is things like, if I go to costs, so all costs have to be allocated to a date and a type. So if I delete that type and go back to main menu, when I now do checks, it should tell me there's a problem on costs. Yes, because there's costs without types in column E, and it says please enter types as necessary. So I click OK, it'll take me back to that sheet. It's filtered it for any problem rows, and it's highlighted column E to show us that it's this column and this row or rows that's got an issue. So if I literally now just choose travel on there, go back to the main menu and run checks again, it should now be happy. Okay, so it checks is just a way just to make sure that you've got everything. Okay, and then the final thing we have is a trial balance. I've said on there it's for accountants use only, just because there's nothing for you to physically do, but this is what your accountant would generally use as a starting point for generating your accounts. So if I click on there, it will tend to ask for a password. It's just so you don't accidentally bore yourself. There's no password currently, so if I just click OK, it will take me straight to the trial balance. Eventually, there we go, and it probably to you it just looks like a raft of numbers. The important thing is that column D and E should, if you scroll down to the bottom, should equal the same number. Yes, so there's no difference there. So it's a trial balance, so it should balance, and it does, so yay. So I wouldn't even bother checking that, because it just will work by, as long as you've run through the checks and everything's been allocated correctly, that should automatically balance. And if it doesn't, there's nothing you can do with that either. So if ever you're checking it doesn't, always send it back to me. But your accountant will probably be more concerned with that than you are. But you will be sent the password to access that. So that is your ACE complete bookkeeping model.